Welcome to Have You Seen This? The podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten cinema. All discussions will be spoiler heavy. You have been warned.
Welcome to Have You Seen This? I'm Jennifer Albright, and we've got a very special guest for you today. He's the scion of a fabulously wealthy publishing dynasty and holds a controlling interest in the Chapo podcast fortune. Will Miniker, thanks for coming on the show.
Greetings. Hello, everybody. Hi, Jennifer. Nice to be here.
Nice to have you on. The reason I asked Will on is it stemmed from a little kerfuffle that happened on hellhole of a website known as Twitter. A bunch of us were talking about an article which came out in, what the hell's the name of this rag?
It's a National Post. It's it's a Canadian newspaper.
Oh, Canadian, so like,
Yeah,
who gives a
Canada. Yeah, exactly.
shit? Like, what do they have to say that's important?
Twitter may be hell to you, listener, but it's home to me.
What you call hell, Will calls home.
Absolutely.
So, we were discussing, in our own inimitable way, this article, which was written by a guy named Colby Kosh.
I call him Colby Cush.
I call him Colby Cheese Dick. I guess he's a... Is he a film reviewer, or is he just like some rando?
I've been told that he's just sort of like some mid-tier Canadian media figure.
Oh, jeez. Well,
Like,
if
I think
you're-
he's just like some like columnist and newspaper guy who's like also on TV sometimes. He's a straight up fuckboy though, and we're going to talk about why.
Can you imagine being mid-tier by Canadian standards?
And also, I'd just like to say right off the bat, Colby is such a great name because Colby is also the name of Carl Diggler's son.
Oh my
If
god,
you're-
maybe
if you're
this
a
guy
fan of
is
the
Carl
Carl
Diggler's
Diggler-
son.
If you're a fan of the Carl Diggler canon, shout out to Felix and Virgil. His large round son is named Colby.
Well, have you seen this guy's picture? He does look like someone's large round son.
Yep. It's perfect. It's like Charles Dickens. The name says everything about the character.
Hard times with Colby Cheese.
Yeah.
So he, this commentator, such as he has wrote an article titled The Obliviousness of Martin Scorsese's Old Man Rant Against Superhero Cinema.
I found this out. Someone sent this to me because I saw again on Twitter someone obliquely saying that somebody was criticizing Martin Scorsese online, and like I'm like one of those teens that get mad when someone gets like insults Beyonce, and I'm like, they're trying to drag Marty. We have to protect Marty.
Here comes the beehive, but for Martin.
Yeah. here comes the Marty squad. That's me online. I will not hear a bad word said against Marty
I agree.
online or in real life.
Yeah, because like, and admittedly, this is I don't want to say it's not out of the scope of this podcast. Have you seen this? Because that was literally our reaction to reading this article was, have you seen this shit?
Yeah, exactly. And someone sent me the article, and I got it, and I looked at the headline, and I was like, you know what? I'm putting this aside. I'm going to eat dinner first before I read this, because I know I needed a full stomach before I became nude and mad.
I need my blood sugar up.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
can dive into this. Because, yeah, like, so what we're going to do is we're going to bring a little bit of the Chapo reading series to Have You Seen
Yeah.
This? And we're just kind of we're going to go through this a little bit, which, and it starts so well just from the first line.
Yeah, it's great.
He says, like Martin Scorsese, I am an aging white dude who is increasingly detached from contemporary cinema.
What I love about that is that the first line of your article, you just tell your audience, I shouldn't be writing about the topic I'm about to expand on.
Yeah, because honestly, it's hard not to read that line and just be like, oh, okay, I guess I don't need to read this.
Yeah, stop reading here.
Yeah, but I accept opinions from all over the spectrum, including those of aging white dudes. Myself being extremely old and extremely white. Okay, I'll roll with that. So he goes on to say, Hollywood has been taken over by superhero comics, which I didn't even really like as a kid. I thought Superman was boring then, and I think so now. Oh, we got a real intellectual here.
I was boring as a child and as an adult.
I mean, before we move on,
I had no friends then or now. The things that I was supposed to like as a kid, I didn't like, and I don't like them now as an adult either. I'm completely insufferable throughout my entire life.
Now, we need to point out, if for anybody who's listening to the show, you know that we're not snobs here. We don't hate popcorn entertainment. There's nothing really wrong with just wanting to enjoy a movie.
Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I don't trust anyone who doesn't appreciate high and low culture.
Indeed, and that's kind of the whole point of the podcast. So
it's a rich tapestry.
Indeed. So, but Colby disagrees. So he says, you might expect me to have been nodding enthusiastically over the holidays when the Associated Press released an interview in which Scorsese griped that cinema is gone. The cinema I grew up with and that I'm making, it's gone. I don't think Marty's wrong here.
No, yeah, he's taking issue with this, or he's going to go on to be like, Marty's so out of touch and entitled or whatever. But Scorsese's exactly right. I mean, he's completely right about cinema being gone, in terms of the kind of filmmaking that Hollywood and the movies that he grew up with, they're not doing anymore, and largely has been replaced by now just these franchises and We now live in a world where you're going to see a Marvel and Star Wars movie every year, basically, until you die. But he's also right in the sense that film as kind of something that you go to the movie theater to see is also dying. Movies have become, and entertainment have become much more personalized, and it's much more immediate, whether through your laptop or on your TV screen. And I'm not necessarily going to lament that either, because I like watching movies and I like the ease with which I can watch them. But not just, I mean, people who be like, oh, I must go to the cinema and see things in the theater. It can sound a little snobbish, but I think there's a truth to that. There's something about the kind of shared experience and movie. There's nothing in the TV that can replicate seeing film in a theater projected, in my opinion.
Yeah, and my take on it is, I'm kind of two minds about it, because having lived in LA for so long and spent a lot of time, going to screenings in town and stuff like that, I always tell people, okay, you need to see Lawrence of Arabia, but you need to see it in 70 millimeter. That's really the way to see it, And I have so many good memories of, screenings that I've been to that were just, again, as a communal event, a lot of the stuff that they do at the Cine Family. Co-host Tim and I went to see a double feature of Better Off Dead and One Crazy Summer with Savage Steve Holland and Curtis Armstrong in person. And it's you don't get that shit, on your iPad, that's great. Yeah. But at the same time, I was boning up on my Scorsese films for this podcast, and I was shit, I can just, rent Mean Streets or Who's That Knocking at My Door right the fuck now and watch it on my laptop,
Yeah. So I mean, nothing about the sort of the way technology is changing entertainment, nothing in that I think is inherently good or bad, but there are trade-offs in all of these things. And for someone like Scorsese, who is really dedicated his life not just to making movies, but also studying and teaching about the history of film, I think he has a good reason to lament certain things that are changing.
Yeah, especially because Scorsese's love of the medium just runs so bone deep. It's hard because a lot of us love movies, but I went to film school and I've seen a lot of shit, but I don't even have that burning and abiding passion that he does just for the medium, You know, this is a guy who watches a movie like every day or something. You know.
Yeah.
But
Well, actually, the Colby, the example he uses is Lawrence of Arabia, just in the next paragraph here.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really good, because Colby Kosh goes on to say, at one moment, he is offering the pretentious film student's complaint that the mystical communal dream experience of being in a theater is dying. The experience of seeing Vertigo and The Searchers in VistaVision. Oh dear, he's going on about film formats. I'm giving the fucking finger right now. Because, okay, I played roller derby for a few years. My skate name was Cinerama, spelled S-I-N-N, and my skate number was 70 millimeter. So when I saw this, I think I saw on Twitter like, oh, hold me back. Hold me back, motherfuckers.
It does look better. And here's the other thing. Like, okay, that increasingly now with like digital projection or whatever, and like 4K cinema, and like, or like where the frame rate is really high. I'm thinking of the Ang Lee movie that came out this year.
Yeah, or like
I have no interest in seeing. I'm sure it sucks. The Billy Lynn's Halftime Walk, right?
Yeah.
Apparently that movie was filmed with like this new technology that makes it look like incredibly realistic, or like there's so many frames per second, and like every pixel is just so crisp and clear. I think that kind of sucks. Like I think what makes film great is kind of the illusion of it, right? And like the like when it looks too real, right? I think it calls attention to the fakeness of it.
Right.
You know, so if it looks too good, like it's just drawing your attention to like it's harder to get lost in it. Unlike the great like the film formats that you're talking about.
Well, did you see any of the Hobbit movies?
Yeah, not in theater though, but I had the same reaction. I thought it just drew attention to the fakeness of everything. Like I thought they looked bad.
Yeah, because co-host Tim and I went to see them. We saw the first one that came out, and like, well, number one, like the movie isn't very good. The first one, I didn't bother to see the other two, and second of all, like it actually, like we saw it at the Bridge, like in West LA, and you know, on like the IMAX screen or whatever, and it looked like shit. I was like, you know, if you're gonna do a high frame rate, like at least make it look good, because it just looked murky and assy, and it was unpleasant to watch.
But also, like especially like in those movies, which are like a great example of just like the laziness of like CGI special effects, or like everything is just CGI special effects. Again, it calls attention to how crummy most of those effects actually look.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember going to see I saw a screening of Go-Go Tales and Mary at Film Anthology in New York that was hosted by Abel Ferrara.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, he's a total weirdo in real life. But
I'm shocked.
But one of the things he said that always stuck with me is that, like, after the movie, he was like, everyone in this room just saw 18 minutes of darkness, and you just didn't realize it. And he's referring to like the illusion of film when it's run through a projector. Like, it actually adds up to about like a fair amount of time that is just black, but the illusion in your mind fills in the gaps, right?
Yeah,
and he's like, that's sort of
vision.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like, that is sort of like, that's the kind of magic, that's the illusion of film. And that always stuck with me, is that, like, you know, your mind fills in those gaps.
Yeah, and you know, and I hate to be that guy who's like, oh, you know, analog, it's just so much warmer and richer, you know, but I mean, that does apply. You know, like,
yeah, I think so.
Because I was a projectionist for many years, and you know, the act of like just physically holding film in your hand, you know, is, I mean, there is something like really special about that these frames like physically exist, as opposed to being like, you know, ones and zeros in a drive. And you know, when I say stuff like that, I'm like, Jesus, Jen, you sound so fucking pretentious. But, I mean, there's like a truth to it. So, like, you know, the point is that you can scoff at, oh, film formats, like, who gives a shit, you know? But I mean, it's like, don't, and it does depend on like how much of a nerd you are, because, you know, obviously, like, I'm more the kind of person who's gonna be interested in like frame rates and talk about shit like show scan and stuff like people never remember. But you know, there's a reason that stuff is good and interesting, you know?
Yeah.
So, this guy's full of shit, but, let's see. In the next heartbeat, he is complaining vaguely about political climate. They can make it very difficult to get the picture shown, to get it made, ruin reputations. Then his editor, the legendary Thelma Schoonmaker, happens along to add footnotes. Shout out to Thelma, who's awesome. He's just tired of slam bam crash. Telling the audience what to think is what he really hates.
I mean, again, I think that's a legitimate critique. I think, like, you know, the way movies are made now. Well, first of all, I feel like they just don't make movies anymore. Like, everything is based on a comic book. It's a remake of something. Like, very, very little movies, very, very few movies are like original screenplays. Or I just feel like the culture is so saturated with just recycling things that people are already familiar with, and I think, like, at a certain level, like, that kind of banality and lack of imagination, I think, is harmful. Like, if you think about, like, us as a culture, that, like, we're not really creating anything new. Mm-hmm. We're just sort of redigesting things that are already widely known and palatable.
Yeah. And it's something which definitely comes out. Have you read Easy Riders, Raging Bulls by Peter
Yes,
Biskin?
I have.
Yeah, fantastic book. And it really lays out how we came to this place, you know, because you had this period in the 70s, like the second golden age of cinema, in which you know, these very risky films were getting made. But at the same time, studios realized that there were certain movies that were going to make them, like, a shit ton of money, you know, like Jaws and Star Wars and stuff like that. And that led us straight into the 80s where, and it's not that filmmaking wasn't always a business. It has literally been a business since its inception, but it just became, you know, calcified into this completely corporate enterprise where, you know, art is not even secondary, but, like, kind of like fourth or fifth down on the list of importance.
Yeah, and, like, and the idea that, like, you know, movies, you know, like, big movies don't get made that are morally ambiguous or
yes.
require like a certain amount of homework on the part of the viewer. They, like, sort of question what they're being shown or why they think a certain way. I think everything is very straightforward and kind of spoon-fed, and I think, again, Scorsese's right. And that's a perfectly good thing to complain about. Well, he goes on and he gets into Scorsese's movie Silence, which just came out. And I got to say, I haven't seen Silence yet.
I haven't seen it yet either. I'd like no time this week.
I haven't seen it yet either. I'm sort of, like, putting it off because I know it's going to be an ordeal. My friend who did see it says it's 2 hours of religious anguish and catechism, followed by another hour of inhuman cruelty. So
sounds like a fun day out at the multiplex.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the funny thing with Scorsese. My friend and co-host Matt Chrisman, who you may also be familiar with, made the great point that Scorsese, because he is a conflicted Catholic, he alternates between doing movies that are, you know, basically like a 3-hour line of cocaine of just psychotic just depravity, like Wolf of Wall Street, for instance, and crime and depravity, and then he'll have to get on his religious kick again and sort of, you know, get into that English religious mode and sort of purge himself of the fun and depravity or the glories of crime and evil, which is
speaking as an ex-Catholic, I'm like, that's so fucking Catholic. It's like my next movie will be Penance.
That's what Silence sounds like. But like, this is a movie he's been trying to make for decades or whatever, and he just, you know, it was inside of him, and he had to do it. And Colby goes on to you know, sort of shit on him for, like, being like, it's so self-indulgent to do this, and, like, he's complaining about, you know, Hollywood, but it cost him $46 million to make this, like, meditative movie about religious faith.
Yeah, and I think we should highlight these words because, like, I don't even know where to start. But okay, so Colby Koch describes Silence, and then he says, in other words, this is a narrative that needs 1 or 2 sets, a cast, and a camera. The reporter then helpfully tells us that Scorsese had some trouble raising the US $46 million he needed to film The Meditative Silence. $46 million. That's not a typo. I checked. Did that money go into the pockets of a big-name cast? Au contraire, says the AP story. Everyone, including Scorsese himself, worked for scale. Very suddenly, Scorsese's nostalgia appears as a form of lucrative insanity whose demise is possibly not to be regretted. And in the next paragraph he says, an adaptation of the book might be an exciting prospect if, say, Pier Paolo Pasolini were alive to shoot it for $100,000 with non-actors and modern equipment. Okay, I think I said on Twitter, but this bitch needs to keep Pasolini's name out his mouth.
And I like it. He's like, well, Silence would be a good movie if something completely impossible happened, like this guy were alive. He's like, oh, I would like that movie. But like,
hey, I would fucking love if Pasolini were still making movies and alive. That would be fucking great. I'm not going to disagree with him there. I mean, the name of the podcast Twitter account is Pasolini's Dead, so there you go. But okay, like now I don't know very much about major film budgeting. I do know that we know that everyone on this worked for scale, right? Obviously, because maybe they wanted to put the bulk of the budget towards other things, which I assume was going on location.
Yeah, it's probably filming in Japan.
It's like, that's not cheap.
Right, yeah.
And, if you have... Here I am defending the rich guy. But if you have the opportunity to raise the money to make what I assume, based on what I've seen of Scorsese's other input, like a beautiful, lyrical, well-shot film, why wouldn't you take that opportunity? Why would you be like, well, okay, like, give me $10,000, like, I'll do it, like, in my garage? Is that more pure? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And also, I want to point out in the previous paragraph, he writes that we all know Scorsese is at his best, making violent, energetic movies of street hustler life, preferably with Nicholas Pileggi or some other outstanding reporter involved. Scorsese's two explicitly religious films, The Last Temptation of Christ and Kundun, were so flaccid and awkward it is hard to look forward to Silence at all. What's funny about that is he says, preferably with, some outstanding reporter or writer. Last Temptation of Christ was based on a novel, but the screenplay was by Paul Schrader. So
there you go.
You can't get a much better writer than him, in my opinion, at least for film. And I got to say, Last Temptation of Christ and Kundun are not bad at all. They're both really good, in my opinion.
Yeah,
they're obviously they're not going to be anyone's favorite Scorsese movie. They're not going to be the one that you rewatch all the time. But they're both, especially I think Last Temptation of Christ, totally worth watching and not at all flaccid and awkward.
Yeah, because I haven't seen Kundun, but I have seen Last Temptation of Christ, and again, I'm not spiritual. Haven't been spiritual for many years, but at the end of Last Temptation of Christ, just the final shot, with the Peter Gabriel music, and then the frame blows out. It was like a camera malfunction, which ended up being fortuitous, and it's just gorgeous, and it's it is done. And I was like, I fucking felt spiritual in that moment. I was so fucking uplifted. I was like, holy shit, that movie's really fucking good. It's not fucking flaccid.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And there's
and what pisses me off is that he's just saying hey, Scorsese, just do the movies that we all like, okay? Just do another crime movie, okay? Enough with this self-indulgence. He doesn't as an artist, you have he has a responsibility. He's demanding that he just be spoon-fed movies that he already likes and appreciates, right? That Scorsese has no right as a director to do a movie that's different from what this asshole expects or already likes.
Yeah, because it's I'm not going to judge him if he puts on, Goodfellas all the time, because Lord knows Tim and I have done that. We've seen that movie, 75,000 times.
I've seen that movie probably well over 50 times.
Yeah. But yeah, to be ooh, why don't you just keep making the same movie over and over again?
It's he's the Bart Simpson, I didn't do it boy. Yeah. Just say the lines.
Say the line, Marty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he's he's complaining that he spent all this money on it, and it's just look, if there's $50 million out there, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, nobody should be fucking making movies, I suppose, if you take this idea that, like, well, there's starving kids in the world. But, like, if there's that money out there, I'd rather it be going to, like, I think, a major artist and filmmaker like Scorsese to do whatever he wants with it than it be spent making 99% of the other shit that it would get spent on in Hollywood.
Yeah, and filmmaking is really a unique art in that it requires so many resources. And, not just the money to make it, like, the crew and time and effort that go into actually, like, making a film. It's like, even if you're doing it on, like, a micro budget, like, there's still, like, so much work that goes into it and time. And it's like, that's just film because you're trying to recreate reality or, like, a replication of reality, to put on a screen in front of people. Like, it's going to be, it's going to be elaborate. And if you want to shoot, like, on location and you want to make it good, like, that's going to cost you a little bit of money. Like, I don't know what to tell you,
and the point is, like, Scorsese is one of the only people left who can get that money behind him to do a movie like this.
Yes.
If you were anyone else, you would have to do this movie for $100,000 and just have it be, like, one set, The fact that Scorsese can get that done because of his prestige and reputation, like, let him do it. He's one of the only ones left who can do it.
Yeah, and especially because there were so many other directors of his stature who actually, and I guess like he did here, had trouble getting funded, in their later years. People like John Huston or Kurosawa, like people that you think like would have money just thrown at them to, like, make a fucking movie, please, like, make whatever the fuck you want. Like, they have to fucking struggle to do it.
Yeah. And, then he goes on in, like, this next paragraph, he says, it raises the question why we need a famous American to interpret Endo's novel. And I like here, he's, like, trying to be woke or something.
Yeah.
Like, he's like,
which is bullshit.
Why is this white male doing an adaptation of a Japanese author's novel?
Yeah, Colby Koch is like, hey, white people, am I right?
yeah. My name is Colby Koch, by the way. And he says, there already exist non-Hollywood adaptations by Japanese and Portuguese directors. And he says, and honestly, if some smartass in Netflix were to buy those properties and slap them up on the site, I would probably watch one or both and ignore Scorsese's version. Again, he's like, if my sister had balls, she'd be my brother, Or just like, if Pasolini was still alive, I'd watch his movie. It's just like he's putting all these conditions up just to avoid ever watching this movie. And it's like, dude, you don't have to. It's okay.
Like, you can go watch, like, Cape Fear again. Like, I did that the other day. It was great.
Counselor!
Come out wherever you are.
I was actually just talking with Nick Mullen, who you may know, another podcast figure.
The legendary Nick Mullen.
The legendary Nick Mullen. De Niro's performance in Cape Fear is so ridiculous. Like, he didn't even try. Like his whatever he's doing there with that accent is just like. Did he work with a dialogue coach? He's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. Nope. But at the same time, is also kind of awesome.
It works because the movie itself is very. I'd forgotten how flamboyant a movie that is.
Yeah. Like,
it's very pulpy and stylized, which fucking works, And, like, just, God, the scene with De Niro and Juliette Lewis, like, holy shit.
Oh, man. In the school play?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
That's the good shit. It's so creepy.
Oh, where he calls her on the phone and he's, like, hanging upside down and shit.
Yeah.
Like a bat in his apartment. And he's like, I'm a do-right man. No, yeah, that movie is great. I love the Scorsese Cape Fear. But it speaks to this thing where he says, like, he keeps saying, he's like, I'm forget this. I'm eagerly awaiting his next gangster flick. Like, he's sort of like saying, like, the only good movies Scorsese has done are the gangster movies.
Like, isn't that a really basic bitch thing to say, too?
That is a super basic bitch thing to say.
Like, oh, well, I like the gangster pictures. I don't care about this fruity Japanese missionary shit. Who gives a fuck? I hope this guy doesn't like The Mission, because then he's a fucking hypocrite.
And he goes on to also shit on his Age of Innocence adaptation, which I gotta say didn't work for me, but as a movie. But again, he let him do movies other than gangster movies. Like, why are you complaining about this?
Yeah, like, it's weird that he dragged, in my opinion, you might disagree, it's weird that he dragged Age of Innocence and not Gangs of New York.
That's true. Gangs of New York, I think, maybe Scorsese's worst movie.
Oh, damn!
Like, if you were to drag one of his
I will
movies-
actually, I will not actively dispute you on that, because I was very disappointed in it.
it was just, oh god, it was such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, because...
And, you know, there's some great parts of it, but
Oh,
like
yeah.
as a movie, I thought it was dumb.
Yeah, it was a bummer because, and I was fucking excited about it because I was like, oh man, like, this is a part of history that no one's really addressed. The setting is so interesting. And then he kind of grafted that history onto this really, like, dull revenge kind of narrative.
Yeah,
And it was just like, okay, you know?
yeah.
Like, he tried, though. Oh, Marty, like, why didn't you just make that for $100,000?
So what? Okay, so now when he moves on here, this is where he really gets offensive when he starts talking about westerns.
Oh, God! Shit, yeah.
In the next paragraph, he writes here, it is odd that Scorsese mentions westerns prominently in his old man rant against contemporary cinema.
Well, you know old man rants, Colby.
Yeah, he just said his first paragraph was like, I'm an old man. Listen to my rant. Most of the westerns ever made are unwatchable.
What?
That's a hell of a statement. It took a while for even John Ford to start making fictional films of the visual caliber and subtlety of The Searchers. Then again, everybody who has an ounce of honesty will admit to enjoying Ford's stuff from the 40s, Stagecoach, and the Cavalry trilogy more than The Searchers anyway. I don't know. I mean, where do you want to begin with this?
I don't even know. Like, fucking... Okay, so I think somebody retweeted him where he was trying to defend this most westerns are unwatchable shit. And I tweeted him, and of course he didn't respond because he's a bitch. And I was like, dude, that's true of most genres.
Yeah.
Most movies. Like, and my evidence for that is I don't know if you're familiar with these books, but there were a bunch of, it was probably when old Hollywood nostalgia first became, like, really big in the 70s. There were these big coffee table books called, like, you know, the MGM story, the Warner Brothers story, blah, blah. It was just basically...
Yeah, actually, I don't know that.
Yeah, they're really great because it's these huge books with, like, stills from, like, everything a studio made. Like, it's literally a catalog of everything the studio made up to, like, 1965 or something like that. And the interesting thing is going through it, you know, obviously you get all the classics in there, but then you're reading, because they get little capsule summaries of all the movies, and some of them are like, oh god, like, no wonder I've never heard of that. That sounds like a pile of garbage. You know, like, and you realize, like, how much complete dross the studios turned out because they were turning out a product.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay, well, shove it into, and, you know, it's not any different today. It's like, shove it onto all available platforms, you know, just keep the content flowing and somebody will watch it. So, you know, it's like the Sturgeon's Law, 90% of everything is garbage.
But, like, he's saying that, like, Ford didn't make movies that were, like, subtle or of a high caliber until The Searchers, which is like, what?
Like, he says, and
like,
yeah, he says he watched Stagecoach. Like, motherfucker, did you really watch Stagecoach?
Oh, and I pointed out like when this came out, like I think my comment on this was like, My Darling Clementine was made in 1946, which is, I think, John Ford's best Western, probably his best movie in my opinion.
Arguably, yeah.
Yeah, which is like, and again, like, you watch that movie and it is every bit as subtle, like the way, like the way, like the shots in that movie are like, and the black and white and like the shadow and light and everything in that movie is incredible.
Yes.
It's incredible. And it's just like, the idea that, like, it took him a decade later to reach a high level of subtlety and visual caliber is like, dude, fuck off.
Yeah,
like,
it's nonsense.
Have you ever watched a movie? Like,
yeah, and another Western, which I would argue is like almost pre-revisionist Westerns, you know, like the Anthony Mann stuff, is Oxbow Incident, which came out in 1943, which is...
Yeah.
A very dark Western with really heavy themes about justice and vengeance, you know? So it's like, there weren't unsophisticated Westerns being made, like, pre the
Yeah, that's
Searchers.
the really dumb thing. Like, that's the dumb thing, is to think that, like, westerns got smart when they became like revisionist or whatever, or became like politically subversive because they were about anti-heroes, and like as he says, like they become much more nuanced about baddies and goodies in his rhetoric, and grow bolder about exploring wider political and historical themes. It's just like, well, then you literally you didn't watch any of the non-revisionist westerns.
Yeah, it sounds like he watched Stagecoach, and then he heard that The Searchers was really good, so he just watched everything from that forward.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I wonder if this guy even knows who Anthony Mann is, but whatever.
Yeah, and he goes on, the makers and consumers of superhero pictures at least pretend to have high informed expectations in this regard. They fucking shouldn't. That's like the worst part about superhero movies, is that they try to have broader political and historical themes to them. They absolutely shouldn't.
No, that's true, and like it's that's like that's a big citation needed right there. I mean, and it's easy for me and my friends to sit around and be like, oh yes, everyone is a quite sophisticated moviegoer like myself. You know, there are huge swathes of people, and they're not wrong. Just going to watch a fucking movie, and that's fine. You know? And the amount of people watching superhero movies who are like just deep, or like analyzing it on any level, like, you know, it's a fraction.
One of the main reasons that like the Marvel superhero movies have been more successful and have achieved like a broader pop cultural cachet than the DC movies so far is because what they get is like, yeah, there's like the special effects and the staging, but like basically those movies are just about character pieces, right? They just get actors to be funny and snarky and like seem like they're having a good time, and like that's why they work, right? I'm not saying like I don't think they're great or anything, but like compare that to the Zack Snyder like Batman, Superman movies where like everything is just fraught with like, you know, these, like he thinks it's like Wagner or something, and it's like, you know, like everything is fraught with these grand, weighty themes about like God and man, and like, and it's just like they're utterly leaden because of it.
Well, because Zack Snyder is a guy who like wants to be super deep, but I don't think he's smart enough to be super deep.
Yeah.
Because like yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I remember liking watching when I saw it, but like having read the book so many times.
Oh man, forget it. He closes out Kobe closes out here. He says, after all, superhero comics have already been through this cycle of genre evolution, arguably a few times older. Just as I'd rather have Pasolini's silence than Scorsese's, I might have liked to see Scorsese's version of Watchmen rather than Zack Snyder's. I do not want to see Martin Scorsese. I'll just put that out there. I do not want to see a Martin Scorsese comic book movie. As far as Zack Snyder's Watchmen, I don't want to see that shit either. I did see it, and what's so good about Zack Snyder's Watchmen is that he basically does a panel by panel recreation of the Dave Gibbons artwork, but manages. It's like the most faithful adaptation visually that manages nonetheless to miss every point of Alan Moore's writing. Yeah. It's the complete opposite of the story Alan Moore was trying to tell.
Yes. Yeah, like having seen it, I agree, and also having read Watchmen like a million times. Because
no, Zack Snyder was the kid who read Watchmen and thought Rorschach was the hero.
We'll say, Zack, please make better movies, and Zack will look down and whisper, "No."
I will say in Zack Snyder's defense, and I believe I said it on Champo, his Dawn of the Dead remake kicks ass.
Oh, dude, I really liked that, and I don't even like zombie movies.
I thought it was fantastic. I loved that movie, and I had high hopes for you, Zach.
Yeah, I think that eventually, like some directors get a little too big of a sandbox to play in, and you know that's how that ends up going.
Anyways, that's Colby and his asinine opinions about Martin Scorsese, and I guess like I wanted to come on and talk Scorsese because I feel like we were talking like, you know, the basic bitch opinion is that like Scorsese's gangster movies are good, and they're just like everything else he does sucks. But like Scorsese, like saying Scorsese is your like favorite director, it has also become kind of a basic bitch opinion, you know.
There are worse basic bitch opinions,
Yeah,
though.
which is true, but also totally acceptable in my opinion.
No, for sure.
Because like when I think like the guy has made so many movies that I love and are entertained by anytime I watch them. Like he has a completely solid track record in my opinion.
Yeah, and that actually goes back to
he says he's made more bad movies than good ones.
yes, that was it.
Yeah.
Which again, citation fucking needed on that. Like I mean, okay. Well, I'll ask the question to you. You mentioned Gangs in New York. Like, what, if any, other Scorsese films do you find inferior or lacking in some way?
That I didn't like. Yeah, Gangs in New York. God, I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember not liking Bringing Out the Dead, the one where Nicolas Cage is the crazy ambulance driver.
Yeah, I haven't seen that since it came out. I couldn't tell you.
That was a Paul Schrader screenplay who normally I like.
I think Paul Schrader has had more misfires than Scorsese.
I love Paul Schrader as a director too, though.
No, I fucking love Paul Schrader, but you know, I think he's had more missteps than Marty.
But like that's the thing is like to be like an artist of any value, you're gonna have to have missteps, right?
Yeah.
Like that's good in a way. Like I'd rather they have missteps and like executing something that like a big creative vision or something that's personal or means something to them than just be like a hack, you know?
No, I agree. Because for me, like, even, Gangs in New York, which, I didn't care for, but I'm like, shit, that was worth going to see because there was interesting shit in it.
Also in retrospect, I'm grading also The Departed kind of harshly because one, it made the city of Boston popular, which I'm against, and two, it just it's vastly inferior, not by itself, but in comparison to Infernal Affairs.
Oh shit!
Which is just a straight up remake
agree.
of.
Fucking cosign. I love Infernal Affairs.
Yeah, just see Infernal Affairs.
Yes.
Like don't bother The Departed. See Infernal Affairs.
Yeah, because Departed was like that was the reason why people were like, you didn't like The Departed, and I was like, yeah, I liked Infernal Affairs a lot. It's kind of like for me, like when I saw I watched Magnificent Seven after watching Seven Samurai, and it was entertaining, but I was like, Seven Samurai.
I actually watched the new Magnificent Seven with Chris Pratt and Denzel Washington.
Oh dear!
And then watched the Kurosawa movie, and I thought the Denzel was better. I kid.
I thought you were gonna have to defend that one on Twitter too.
No.
Honestly, for me, there's no reason to watch the Magnificent Seven remake because Robert Vaughn isn't in it, so I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. But I'm talking about like the Scorsese movies that I think are like I thought were misses. My timeline was roiled recently by the revelation that I believe Casino to be superior to Goodfellas. Now, I do. I think, in fact, I would say Casino is my favorite Martin Scorsese movie.
Oh, damn.
Obviously, it's always compared to Goodfellas. Let me be clear, though. I love both movies more than life itself, and I've seen them, again, dozens and dozens of times. Could probably quote almost any line from them immediately. Like, Goodfellas was like a formative experience for me as a kid, and like will always be among my all-time films. I don't mean to say I think Casino is a better movie. I just mean that, like, in a push, me personally, I like Casino more. And for me, it comes down to this. Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, he won the Oscar for it, amazing. Joe Pesci in Casino, I think, better than Joe Pesci in Goodfellas. And there's so much more of him. Joe Pesci had a lot of great moments in Goodfellas, but there are so many more great Joe Pesci moments in Casino. And him doing the Chicago accent and everything, to me, is the best. I Nicky Santoro in Casino is my favorite, and it's just so generous because there's so much of him.
Well, Will, I actually grok what you're saying because I far prefer a Grease 2 to the first Grease. No, but seriously, because like I actually I dragged you on Twitter as a joke because it was funny, but I got what you were saying because I know what it's like when you have like two really excellent films, but one like speaks to you more.
Like Goodfellas is like, it's a tighter movie. It's a perfect movie. Like nothing's there that doesn't belong. It's a perfect movie from the first frame to the left. Casino is sprawling. It's all over the place. It's digressive, but like that to me is what I like about it.
Yes, and it's funny too because I actually have a huge problem watching long movies that aren't Lawrence of Arabia. Because I have ADHD and my brain don't work right, so I tend to get a little bored during. And Casino's like what, 3 hours long? Yeah,
it's like 3 hours.
Yeah.
I had it on VHS and it was the double VHS box.
Yeah, but I revisited Casino the other night. And, because I wanted to check on your opinion to see if it was legit. And I was not bored because the trio at the heart of the film, you have your De Niro, Pesci, Sharon Stone, and the way that relationship forms and is pulled apart, completely held my attention.
Yeah.
And then you had all the other stuff like, Sharon Stone's, Ginger's fucked up relationship with her old pimp that she's known since she was...
James Woods, hello!
Not legal in any way, shape, or form.
James Woods in Casino, again, amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. And slight digression about James Woods. James Woods is the answer to the question, who is my favorite actor who is also... absolutely a piece of shit in real life. Like the person I feel most problematic about loving pretty much every movie they're in, James Woods is the answer to that question. And his character in that movie, I think, is basically how he is in real life.
Yeah, I can see that. And I would also like to make a statement on behalf of the Have You Seen This organization? We are 100% pro Sean Young on this show. We are glad that she apparently glued his dick to his leg. People say she's crazy, but saying she might have been onto something there.
How long do you think it took him to notice it? Also, through the grapevine, apparently James Woods does have a huge dick. So take it for what it's worth, and then vomit.
Oh, I will never love again. But yeah, no, I agree. Like, that's I also love in Casino when Ginger flies with her pimp with her daughter in tow and all the little bits of business of him clashing with the kid who's just annoying the shit out of him.
Yeah. He's like, he's like, you call him and we'll get the one thing that he cares about, and is pointing at her behind her back.
Yeah, because it's funny, but you are also so on edge. As it's happening, because you're like, oh my god, like what the fuck is gonna happen to this kid? But yeah, so I agree, like that is a legitimate opinion because I expected to not like Casino at all because I'd heard from so many people that it was just like a big mess, and this is when avid editing was a thing and everybody was playing with their shiny new digital toys, and so he was just putting different things in different places because he could, and maybe he was, but it's it works in a strange way if you have the patience to stick with it.
I mean, yeah, it's just it's intoxicating. It's by far his most violent movie. The end of that movie is actually sickening. The cornfield scene scarred me deeply when I first saw it.
How old
the whole
were you?
scene. I was in my teens, probably.
See, I saw. I don't know if I've told the story on the show before, but one time my dad and I were at Blockbuster, and he found Clockwork Orange, and he was like, "Oh,
nice.
you should see this. It's really good." I was 14.
Think that was a little too young.
So we get to the scene where they're about to rape the girl in the theater. My dad turns to me and says, "I probably shouldn't have rented this movie." But then we watched the rest of it.
What a good dad.
I know, my dad rules. But yeah, you were saying about the last scene in Casino.
Oh yeah, the cornfield scene, but also a huge innovation in voiceover narration.
Yes.
Where Pesci has the voiceover narration throughout the movie, and it cuts it off at that scene. I always love that. Or like,
Oh shit!
the voiceover narration catches up to reality at that moment, right as they kill him, right as they beat him to death.
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't even know.
And he's like, at the end of the movie, he's like, we had to wait until things cooled down. Like the boss just set up a meeting for us in this cornfield outside. Ah! And like right as they get kneecapped with the bat, like.
Oh, gee, it makes you think maybe Scorsese should just make more gangster pictures.
Yeah. I was going to say the one movie of his that I revisited recently that is a very slept on Scorsese movie that I recently rewatched and thought was fantastic was The Color of Money.
Which I haven't seen, unfortunately.
You haven't seen it? Okay, well, it's Paul Newman is reprising his role as Fast Eddie Felson from The Hustler. So it's sort of an unofficial sequel to The Hustler where he's like older, and it's Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise plays this young, like, pool prodigy who Paul Newman kind of takes under his wing and like teaches him how to hustle, and like they go on the road together. Mary Elizabeth Mastriano.
Whatever.
It's the screenplay is by Richard Price. There's cameo. Forrest Whitaker has a small part in it. Iggy Pop has a split-second cameo in it.
Oh, nice.
I highly recommend Color of Money. It's just like a super fun, entertaining movie from start to finish, and it's like it's young Tom Cruise and like an older Paul Newman, and it's about like he mentors him and tries to teaches him how to be like a pool hustler basically, but it's also sort of meta because it's it's all about teaching him how to act basically. Which I thought was very interesting, like the interplay between someone like Newman and a young Tom Cruise.
So I'll have to add that one to the queue because the ones that the other ones that I watched, I rewatched Cape Fear. I actually hadn't seen Mean Streets in spite of being almost 40. Wow. I don't know how the fuck I let that one slip by because I loved Mean Streets. Mean Streets
was like again another like totally foundational movie for me that I saw like as a teenager because it just was like it was like had that sense of like independent film before that sort of was a thing. It was just sort of like you felt like it was a movie that like you could make because it was just a movie sort of about Scorsese and his friends and like the neighborhood they grew up in.
Yeah, and that's what I dug about it, especially like in comparison to Scorsese's later stuff where he did a lot of incredibly virtuosic filmmaking, like very technically advanced, which is totally fine with me. Like I love Steely Dan, so I'm not hating like studio cleanness and stuff like that. Yeah. But by comparison, Mean Streets is very raw, like the audio's raw, and it has a much like not a messier feel, but there's like a lot of handholding going on because they couldn't afford camera track. Stuff like that, and it really did feel like it is a movie that makes you go like, God, I want to make a fucking movie,
Yeah, absolutely, and like it's a great New York City movie. Like it really captures like the Lower East Side and Little Italy and this kind of this lost era of 70s New York, like really
gross like, 70s dirty crime-ridden awesome New York.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like I said, that was the movie like I saw that when I was a kid that like just really, really got me hooked on movies because it seemed like something that like you could do, that like you could imagine making a movie like this yourself. Yes. And I'm like, I'm not a filmmaker. I didn't become a filmmaker, but like there's something about that was like, it was very intuitive and like just really like helped me get into movies in a way.
Yeah, and it's interesting too in light of the other Scorsese film I watched, which was his first feature, Who's That Knocking at My Door? Starring a baby Harvey Keitel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a proto Mean Streets because, again, it's about these in that same milieu, like Little Italy and these like hierarchical. One of the things that interests me most about Scorsese films is like the hierarchical male friendships.
Yeah.
And, a culture which is like utterly alien to me.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that reminds me. Do you remember a while back when that one guy, everyone flipped out because that guy wrote a thing about how like women don't like Goodfellas?
Oh, right. Yeah, that was that. Oh my God, yeah, it was Kyle Smith of the New York Post, who's like he's a reactionary prick basically.
At the New York Post,
he's like the right wing movie reviewer or whatever. He's the right-wing movie reviewer. He's like the right-wing
Christ.
movie critic. It stinks.
We already
He's
had a
Jay
John
Sherman, but with like the politics of the National Review.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say we already had a John Simon. You know, we don't
Yeah.
fucking need another one, but okay. But yeah, because I remember that, and I remember going like, you know, because and I understand.
No,
if it's-
I went there and I hit the buzzer to the New York Post and I was like, "Hello, you have a hula working in your movie department." Kyle Smith, film department is a hua.
Yeah, like, it confused me because, and I understand if the argument was maybe like, oh, women can't relate to this on a certain level because, obviously movies about, like, masculine spheres are out of my experience, but they fascinate me because of that. You know, and it's like, that's why, like, you know, stuff like Goodfellas and Mean Streets, I'm like, oh shit, this is really fucking interesting.
Well, the really funny thing about the Kyle Smith article was he was like, the ultimate male fantasy is having friends that you hang out with. And it's just like, Kyle, what are you trying to tell us here? This isn't a fantasy. This is just like people usually just have friends and they hang out and have fun. You know, like it's not, he lives vicariously through Goodfellas, not like a life of crime and like, you know, as Henry Hill says, you know, the people who got up and go to work every day, they were fucking dead to us. Like, not that isn't the fantasy he's living out. It's the fantasy of just having friends and having fun with them.
Someday Kyle would like a friend. I hope someday I can have a friend.
No, and to your point about Mean Streets is about these sort of these hierarchies of like male friendship groups. Again, what I really loved about that, is like the Robert De Niro character in that movie. Like the Harvey Keitel is the sort of more buttoned up one. He's an up and coming young mafioso. He's going
places.
He's going places. And De Niro is the friend who's just like the loose cannon, like the fuck up. And I thought that really captured like that everyone has that one friend in their group to varying degrees. That is the Johnny Boy character. That is the Robert.
And not to get all Tumblr on this discussion, but as someone who struggles with ADHD and has been known to make a few bad decisions in her life, I absolutely love that character. Like the character who just every time has the opportunity to do the
fuck
correct
up
thing and just doesn't just like not do the correct thing, but just makes the situation 20 times worse.
Yeah, he's just like a social terrorist. Like in any situation, like he can just like go off at any moment and just make things a million times worse. Or like it's just like the constant self-sabotaging where like the whole thing is like he keeps trying to help Johnny Boy over and over and over again, and like he just like it doesn't work. Like this guy, like you know. But he's your friend though, and like and a lot of times those are your funnest friends.
Yes.
So,
oh yeah, like you said, there's one in every social group.
Yeah. Everybody has a Johnny Boy. I mean, he's the extreme degree, but like it is an archetype that exists on a varying level of intensity. But everybody, I think, has a Johnny Boy in their life or had at some point, especially in childhood or early adolescence.
So who's the Johnny Boy of Chapo? Is it Amber? Tell me it's Amber.
Yeah, no, it's Amber. Well, Felix is the one who gets us in trouble the most. So
that's true.
Maybe Felix is the most problematic. Usually, if someone's angry or something we did, it's usually something Felix said. So
it's funny too how and again like erasure of women shaking my damn head, you know, like Amber fucking coined the term "dirtbag left." You know, when's she gonna get some recognition and vitriol?
Most of like the sort of liberal critics who are women themselves just refer to her as a woman. They're like Chapo consists of like blah 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 and a woman.
That's just choice. But again, like getting back to Scorsese, yeah, I mentioned Who's That Knocking at My Door, which is interesting as like the proto Mean Streets, and I would say to the listeners is worth a look, if only for when you watch it, you're like, this is like he was such a Scorsese like right from the get-go. I mean, it's like literally his thesis film like expanded into a feature, and his voice is already so defined.
Yeah.
That it's incredible. Like in the And it is extremely
I
naive.
haven't seen that one, so I will check it out now,
It can be
for
rented
sure.
on Amazon, so check it out.
Awesome.
It's like a $2 rental. And it's not, it doesn't entirely succeed, but in terms of themes that he explored later, you know, like, of course, it's like all about Catholic guilt. It's all about you and your fuck up friends in Little Italy. You know, the camera work is very Marty. Also, there's like a scene that I think the distributors forced him to insert, which is just possibly a fantasy sequence of Harvey Keitel having sex with a bunch of prostitutes set to the end by the Doors. Which, you know, that's cool. And I also shout out to Harvey Keitel for just getting nude right from the start.
He's always been willing to show his hog in movies.
It's fucking great. Like, again, like, official have you seen this policy is we love guys who get nude on camera. Like, thank you, nude gentlemen of the cinema. You are
I'm gonna start camming right now, actually.
Harvey was the original cam boy.
Yeah, absolutely. Harvey Keitel, cam boy. I love it. That's why he doesn't really make movies anymore. He's camming.
And, you know, he was quite the dish when he was young. So, you know, there's that.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, I love, going back to Mean Streets, I love Scorsese's cameo in that.
Where does he show up again?
He shows up in the bar, and you think he's just going to be in the background, but then he's the one at the end in the car who shoots De Niro.
Oh, right. Cool.
And you see him, and he's so tiny and little, it's adorable.
Okay, so, like, I will always love Scorsese because I just feel like he seems like such a nice guy in person, too. And I'll never forget, did you ever see that thing? It was like one of these like supercuts somebody made. It's on Vimeo. I think it's just this like Brazilian guy did this like huge supercut that like just like edited together Scorsese and Stanley Kubrick movies and like set it to music.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
You ever see it? It's totally worth checking out. I mean, it's like it's straight crack if you're. I think you'll enjoy it. And like he did this. It's like 9 minutes long, and it edits together the movies like really in a really crisp, like entertaining way. Like he finds threads and like it makes them sort of interact with one another. He puts it to music. It's really awesome. Scorsese found it and then recorded a video of him watching it and did a message to the guy on Vimeo and told him how much he loved it.
Oh my god, that's so amazing.
Yeah, I'll send you the link to it.
Oh, do, yeah, because that's like, because the internet is so choked with reaction videos, and that's like the one that I want to see.
Yeah, definitely. So.
That's so great, oh my god. But yeah, like, I'm trying to remember if I've said everything I want to say about, who's that knocking at my door? I mentioned the camera work, I mentioned, Harvey gets nude, yeah, no, I mean, like, you know, because you haven't seen it, so we can't, like, discuss in detail. I'll just recommend that people check it out, because, you know, for completists, obviously, but it is interesting to watch in light of later Scorsese.
Before we wrap up, can I give my plug for what I think is the film of the year, now that we're coming towards awards season?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
It is. I'm imploring all the listeners to go see, if you have not already, Paul Verhoeven's Elle.
Yes.
Which just won, Isabelle Huppert just won the Golden Globe for it. He just won Best Foreign Film. I couldn't be happier for the two of them. Paul Verhoeven's Elle, I think, is the movie of the year. It is excellent and problematic.
Good. I wouldn't expect any less from my man, Paul Verhoeven. We are a 100% pro Verhoeven podcast. We've discussed his stuff on the show.
He's a genius, absolutely. But warning though, do not read anything about the movie before you go to see it. The less you know about it, the better, because the way the movie's covered gives you a false impression of what you're actually going to get. A lot of people are confused about it. So just know it's Isabelle Huppert being amazing and directed by Paul Verhoeven, and it is extremely problematic, but also also brilliant. Like all I'll say for it is like it captures all of the observations that Verhoeven has made about men in all of his movies, like men and sex, through the eyes of a female protagonist, which I don't think I know he did do once before, I think one of his early Dutch movies, but like this is like, I think a complete statement like on his oeuvre in a lot of ways.
Nice. I can't wait to go see it myself. I have to see this movie.
All right. Jennifer, great talking with you.
It was good talking with you, Will. Come back anytime. And,
I would love to.
Thanks again.
Thank you.